I'm James Holder. Welcome to Full Court Football 24. Quite privileged to be joined by former Sheffield United, Stoke City, Derby County, Preston North End, Barnsley, Leeds United, Millwall, Stevenage and Port Vale star, none other than Michael Tonge. How are you, Michael? All right?
I'm very well, thank you, James. Very well.
Glad to hear it. Do people call you Tongy or Tongo in football? What was your nickname?
It's Tonge.
Tongy.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it.
I've never had Tonge.
Always wonder why footballers had an E, a Y, an O to names, people's names. What do you think the reason that is?
I think it just makes it easier to say, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think so. It's just something that's always been there, hasn't it? So that's all I can think of.
Indeed. I want to look a little bit back on your footballing journey today. You've had a fantastic career. Firstly, I hope everything's been all right for yourself and your family. What's been going on and stuff?
Yeah, no, it has. I mean, obviously, it's been difficult for everyone, and it's not been that hard because there's people been in a lot less fortunate positions. People from the NHS who've been working non-stop, so I don't think it's right to be complaining. Really, we've probably had it easier than most. But yeah, we've been all right. Hope yours has as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I can't complain. Just adjusting like everyone and trying to make the best of things, really. I know you're from Manchester in the north of England. Was that where you were brought up, and how was your childhood?
Yes, I'm from Manchester. I'm from a place called Astley, which it's close to Lee, sort of, and Lee's in Wigan, but I'm more close to Manchester, to be honest, than anywhere else. I had a really good childhood. Went to school, a place called Bedford High School, and then left there at 16 and went straight off to Sheffield United. So, that's how it went.
Did you spend a lot of time at Manchester United as a young boy, as a child?
Yeah, I got picked up for United. I think I was about 9, something like that. So from young, really, we used to go down there, train once a week. Nobby Styles, he was running it then. Way back then, he was the first person who sort of took us for training and stuff, and then carried on playing for local team, Blackmore, which is basically where I'm from. And then once, I think it was when you got to under 12, if I'm right, under 12s or 13s, you then stop playing for your local team and you played for your sort of club team on a Sunday instead against all the other clubs. So obviously I went doing that with United, did that all the way up until I was 16, and then I was released by United. Went on trial at a few different places, to be honest, in and around the northwest, really, because in my head I didn't really want to leave the northwest. I wanted to stay at home. But I went to Sheffield United. It was one of the first clubs that I went to, and they basically, the way it came around is when I was at United, Steve Bruce, he was the manager of Sheffield United, and his son Alex was at Man United at the time, and a guy called Paul McGuinness, who was heavily involved with United youth at the time, just had a word with Steve and said, look, we're not keeping him, but you might want to have a look at him. So Steve Bruce obviously spoke to the youth team managers there, Russell Slade, Steve Miles at the time, and then I went over, played a game, they came and watched, and they offered me something pretty much straight away, I think. But I never obviously signed and said, I'm definitely going to do it straight away, because I was still a little bit wary and I was looking at different places. I went to City, because I'm a City fan. I remember I went to Blackpool, Blackburn, a couple of different places, but eventually I think City did offer me something, but it was just a year. And obviously not at Sheffield, I had the full YTS 2 years. So I thought, my dad was saying to me, I think really you should go for the Sheffield one. They're more committed to you going there. And I was still a little bit, wary of, because I didn't want to leave home. I didn't want to move. But in the end, I decided to go and give it a go and see how I got on.
The youth player at Manchester United at the time, was it difficult to break in and get into the first team and even get a pro contract due to the success of the class of '92 and the past players that they've had at United?
I think looking back now, definitely. But I think when you're in it, you don't necessarily think like that. I think as I'd got a little bit older and got there, I'd been like, this is going to be really tough because they've already got a lot of younger lads playing in the team who are good. But to be honest, at the time, Man United was just dominating English football. So it was always going to be very difficult to break in to a Man United team at any time. And, you know, when you're there, you see there's lads coming from all over the country. I mean, it's changed even more now where they're coming from all over the world. But yeah, at the time, they're coming from all over the country. Competition's really high. And in hindsight, at the time, obviously, you don't necessarily think it, but it was probably a blessing in disguise for myself because I think I managed to break in at Sheffield United much earlier, whereas if I'd have stayed at United, even if I had probably progressed as a pro, at some point I would have probably ended up leaving the club. So, yeah, it was a tough time to go through and try and follow that, and probably a lot of the other lads who stayed found that problem as well.
Talk to me about signing for Sheffield United. Talk to me about Steve Bruce initially and everything that went along with the transfer.
Well, the mad thing was really, I agreed to sign, and I, was going over there basically for that pre-season. But Steve Bruce actually left that summer. He went to Birmingham. I mean, to be honest, he wasn't there. He just put me in the hands of the youth team manager. So that wasn't really an issue. And then Adrian Heath came in charge. So I did the pre-season with youth team. Obviously, I was going there as such to be involved with the first team. So that change didn't affect me. So, yeah, Steve Bruce, I've got a lot to thank him for putting a good word in for me. But I didn't really see him when I was there because he'd left.
How long did it take you to then establish yourself as a first team player from YTS at Sheffield United?
Well, I did the first year because I still was going over there, I was still very unsure. And I was thinking, I never really liked staying away from home and why I'd be a bit of a home bird in that sense. And I sort of went over there thinking, I don't even know if this will last, whether I'll stay there and do it. But my dad sort of said, go over and give it a try and see what you think. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. But when I went over there, just straight away after about a week, I was like, no, I really feel really comfortable there. And it's like anything, isn't it? If you go somewhere and you feel comfortable in the surroundings, it makes things much, much easier. I moved into digs with a couple of lads who were really, really, really good to be around, and the lads in the team were really good, and the digs lady made everything really quite seamless for me. It just made it feel really, really comfortable. So yeah, I stayed, enjoyed the first season, played a bit in the youth team, and then the way it was then, because it was over 2 years, you didn't have like under 17s and under 19s. It was just an under 18s. So the first year, you didn't really play that much because the older boys were playing. And then, the second year, I was captain, and then I sort of flourished then, really. I started to kick on. And as it happens with a lot of players, you don't really grow and fill yourself out until you get to maybe 17, 18. And I think I just felt stronger and stronger. And then I was playing in the youth team, started playing for the reserves. And then at the end of that second season in the YTS, I made my debut for the first team. Neil Warnock put me in. I think my first game, I came on a sub. That was against the old Wimbledon, actually. So maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that, showing how old I am. But yeah, it was quite strange because for that game, I didn't even really. I didn't. There's a bit of story to this, actually. I didn't actually turn up for the game because basically I'd been training with the first team, and normally they'd put a squad list up, as who was, involved or whatever, and for the game. starting 11, subs or whatever. So we trained anyway in the morning, and then there was the game. The game was the next day, and obviously no one had said anything to me. And obviously I'm only young, so I thought, well, I'm not just going to not go in and train with the young lads. Obviously my boys, the YTS, and do a session and just presume that, you know, I'm in the first team squad for the game. So I just went in and done a session, did a full training session. We did running afterwards, the lot. And then I was just going down as we normally would do for the game in the evening. And then I got a call. I think I was just getting some sweets or something to eat before the game. It was on one of the roads in Sheffield. I can remember it now. And the phone went, and it was the youth team manager, Ron Reid. He rang me, said, "Oh, Michael, where are you?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just on the way down to the ground now, Ron," because I just thought he's wondering where the lads are, you know, to sort out what we needed to do at the ground. And he was like, "Oh, you're involved, you're on the bench." And I went, "Well, I didn't know. Nobody told me." And he went, "Don't worry about that. Just get yourself down here as quick as you can." So I got down there. That must have been about just before they were going out for the warm-up. I got down. And then I went out, did the warm-up. Obviously, I weren't starting. And I ended up coming on. So I'd done a full training session, running the lot, and ended up coming on for the game. Made my debut, and then made a couple of appearances. But then I made my full debut on the last game of the season. That year we played Bolton at the Reebok. It was the year Sam Allardyce was the manager. It was the year they went up to the Premier League. So yeah, it was quite strange, really. It was nice because obviously Bolton is really, really close to where I live, and the Reebok Stadium was really new at that point. So it was sort of it was a big deal for me anyway. It was my first start, and again, I'd been travelling with the team. Got to the game, went to the changing room. The gaffers read the team out, and I'm sort of listening for my name in the subs. I thought, oh, I'm not on the bench. It's a shame. Never mind. Anyway, one of the lads said, "Oh, that's good. Congrats, first start." And I was like, well, "What are you on about?" And he was like, "Oh, no, you're starting." I went, no, because I weren't even listening for the first 11. But I think, obviously, the manager hadn't told me because I think, well, I know he didn't want to make me nervous. So sometimes it's better if you're just thrown into it. You've got no time to get stressed out or anything like that. So yeah, I was straight in there, and then we played the game. And yeah, they had some good players. Bolton, I think, played against. Remember Per Franson in midfield. They had who else did they have? Goodney Bergson, is it? Mike Whitlow, he was left back. I think Michael Ricketts, striker. Yeah, they had a decent team. I think we lost the game, but my lasting memory from that game really was it was the first time I'd played in front of a really loud, packed crowd. And when they scored, I remember being like, "Oh, flipping heck, that's loud." And I was like, "Flipping heck, this is the real stuff now. We're well into it." You know what I mean? I was quite taken aback by this is something that you've got to sort of deal with. But as anything, you just get used to it, don't you? As it goes on.
As a young pro at Sheffield United, when you're first breaking into the first team, was there any initiations for the young players, or was there anything you had to do to sort of earn the respect of senior pros?
Do you know what? There used to be a few little things, like at Christmas and stuff. If you're in the YTs, what the pros used to try and get you to sing and do that sort of stuff. But if I'm honest, it was more. It wasn't from the first team. The first team weren't really that bad, and I don't know why. I seemed to escape singing. I never ended up doing it for the first team because I know obviously now everyone ends up standing up and giving them a song and what have you, which is quite fortunate because I would have been dreading that if there'd have been, you know, if you said it's the worst feeling of sound and the worst feeling in the world when you're at dinner the night before a game on a Saturday, it's a Friday night, and you just hear that somebody ting the glass with a fork or a spoon as if now it's time for singing, and you'd be like, "Oh no." But no, I don't think I ever had to do it. So there's no real. I've not got a good story with that really, because I know a lot of people will have. I was quite fortunate.
How did you get on with Neil Warnock early on in your footballing career? And what was he like as a manager, as a young player? Would you have much interactions with him?
Well, Neil was obviously a big influence in my career with giving me my opportunity in the team. But I think for a young lad going in, he had sort of a presence as a fear factor where you knew that he could be quite volatile and sort of get angry at certain stuff. But to be honest with you, with the young lads, and certain lads, that's one of obviously his strengths, is knowing how to speak to different lads, different players, and get the best out of them, and know who needs a rocket and who needs an arm round them. But from a personal point of view, and from seeing some of the other younger lads, he was really good. He'd get you involved in it. I mean, he'd always try and take the mick a few times and say certain stuff, but I think that was all part and parcel of just trying to make you feel comfortable within the group. But yeah, I think everybody was in the club was a little bit on edge. If he was around, you'd be thinking, right, look busy, look like you're doing something. But no, he was great with me, and he always, from starting playing, I think with Neil, if he knows that he can trust you and that you're always going to give it your all, and I know that seems pretty obvious that people should do that, but if he knew you had the right character and you were a good lad and a nice person, he'd always give you the respect, and no matter what he said, you wouldn't take it to heart. And then the next game, you'd just be basically, he'd give you a rocket on a Saturday and then come in on a Monday, and it's gone then, and you're on to the next game. You know what I mean?
Some of his post-match interviews have become the stuff of legend. Obviously, they're iconic. He's been well documented how passionate he can be. Have you got any stories or moments regarding Neil Warnock that you can share with us?
Well, there's a few different things that he's done over the years, and I think to be honest with you, since coming away from Sheffield United, I didn't actually realise how many people are sort of interested to know what he's like. Everyone always asks me, "Oh, what was Neil Warnock like?" Da 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 da. I'm just trying to wrap my brain now. I mean, what he was very good at is he'd always be on to the ref. That's for sure. And he's funny in the changing room, because sometimes he'd come in, for example, after a game, and I think again this is one of his strengths as a manager. So if, say, you're losing, you could be losing, I don't know, 1-0 at half time, and normally you could be playing shocking or you're absolutely terrible, everyone's all over the place, and you think he's going to absolutely lose it here and go off the handle. But then sometimes he'd come in and he'd go, "Oh, fucking hell, still in it, aren't we?" And you're thinking, and in his head he's thinking, we've been that bad, we should be completely out of sight here. And he's thinking to himself, if we put anything together, we'll beat these. And straight away, your mindset flips, and you're thinking, he's right, actually. If we actually put anything together, we'll actually win this game. And the amount of times that actually worked was quite incredible. And I think that's what his strength is knowing when to lose it, when not to. And like also, on the flip side of it, I'll give you an example. You'd sometimes come in winning, and you'd think, "All right, we're flat," and then he'd come in and absolutely lose it. Because we played Norwich away, and this is from a personal one. This is why I can remember it. We played Norwich away in the league, and it was the start of. We'd started the season really well, and we were beating Norwich. I think it was 3-0 at half time. This is away at Carrow Road, and they were decent, Norwich, at the time. They had a really good team in the Championship. I'd scored, won a penalty, and been doing really well in the game, flying in the game. So I've come in like thinking brilliant, and he's absolutely lost it at me, because there was a situation where they'd all been attacking and we broke, and I was going with the ball at I can't remember, it was one of their defenders, and it was like a 2 against 1 situation, and I just needed to make the right pass, and one of our lads was clean through, and I overhit it, and he just lost it, because all he's thinking is, if we'd have scored that and it's gone 4-0, then they'll never come back. And all that second half, I remember just thinking to myself, I had the fear of God in me, running back constantly, because it came back to 3. We had a man sent off, and they came back and they got it back to 3-2. And I can remember thinking, if they score this third goal, that could be me done. But fortunately, they didn't end up doing that. But yeah, he's. I'm just trying to think of some other stories, what he's been like in the changing room. At Bramall Lane, for example, I'll give you an example of something he might do. So at Bramall Lane, when you go into the home dressing room, you turn in left and all the lads sit there. But then there's sort of another section of the changing room that goes out to where you get showered. And it obviously, if you've got beat or whatever, you'd come in and all the lads are sort of sat here like this, head down. And he always used to wait till the referee comes in at the end. So, to give him some. So the lads are all sat there waiting, and you're thinking to yourself, you can hear him shouting down the corridor, and he's marching down, and you're thinking, he's coming here we go. And then sometimes he'd just walk in and he'd go, da 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 da, not pick anyone out, not say anything, but then he'd start getting changed, getting undressed to go and have a shower. So he'd just not say that much, march into the showers, and everyone's sat there, and everyone's thinking, right, what do we do here? Do we just sit here? Do we just wait? And then he'll come. I know he's gone in there and he stood in the shower, and I'm thinking, all that's going through his mind, little things are coming back in his brain from through the game, and then he'll come flying back in and go, and you fucking did it. And he's having to go at someone, and then so he'd down with someone there. Then he'd go back off into the shower, and everyone's still sat there thinking, does that mean we get shot? And then he'll come flying in again, and that's the sort of stuff he'd be like after a game. But on the whole, to be honest, he is lively, obviously, on the touchline, but in the changing room, I think he is pretty controlled. Obviously, I mean, you might have seen the documentary that he did for Sheffield United is pretty accurate to what he might be like in the changing room. But I think that's where he was really good as a manager. His team talks were always just spot on to get the best out of the lads, and he was very good at analysing the opposition, realising what their strengths were, and sort of putting us in a formation or a situation to combat that.
Was he heavily involved in the training sessions, or would he have left the sessions to his coaching team and different people?
Well, yeah, it's a good question actually. He didn't really take the training sessions. The gaffer, Monday, Tuesday. Say it was Saturday. Say we were playing Saturday. He wouldn't take the training session Monday, Tuesday. But then come Thursday, we always sort of did our shape on Thursday, and he'd always take that. We'd have a sort of 11v11, and he'd be talking through, say I was in the starting 11, we'd be playing against another 11. They'd set up how, so we were playing, so we're playing Burnley. So they'd set up how Burnley were playing, and then he'd be talking about, say they've got a striker, he'll be going, he does this all the time, and he'd speak to the other team, get them to try and imitate what they do, and just basically go through with the starting 11 what we might come up against. And that's really, he did his work Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, obviously he knew he had Kevin Blackwell, who's with him now actually at Middlesbrough, who's a very good coach, and he'd take it Monday, Tuesday. Training was always really good, but he obviously had a lot of trust in him and knew that things were going to be done right. And yeah, sort of Thursday, Friday, he'd take the shape, and then Friday he'd watch the five-a-side and bits and pieces. But yeah, he always knew what was going on, even if he wasn't necessarily right in the middle of it. And if he was watching training and he's seen it wasn't quite up to scratch or whatever, he'd step in and make sure it was right. He never let the standards drop, and if he's seen people weren't doing things properly, yeah, he was quick to put them right on it.
What's it like playing in a Sheffield derby? What's the stick like, and when you're involved in such a big game?
It's brilliant, to be honest. It really is. I used to relish playing in them derby games. I really did. I used to love it. Sheffield is a really great city, but what you find in Sheffield, and obviously it's very different. I obviously live in Manchester. What you find's a lot different there is you're either Sheffield United or Sheffield Wednesday. Whereas, in Manchester, you've got Man City, United, Liverpool are close. A lot of people support Liverpool, Everton, but there's so many clubs in a close proximity. Whereas there, you're just one or the other. So it's really, really intense. And there's always a massive build-up for the game, and the atmosphere's electric. And obviously Sheffield Wednesday, sort of from my time, were just before my time. They'd obviously spent a lot of time in the Premier League, so they were sort of coming down a little bit, and the tide was sort of turning, whereas Sheffield United was sort of beginning to then overtake them again. So yeah, they were great. I mean, I think my first derby was at Hillsborough, actually. Yeah, it was. I must have only been 18, something like that. And I remember playing, because I was obviously 18. I remember I was playing against Carlton Palmer in midfield, and he was towards the end of his career by then, Carlton Palmer. And I think it was me and Brownie. We was playing against Carlton Palmer. I can't think what the other player was called, but they still had quite an experienced team, even back then. But I think we may even adjust. I think we drew the game. It was either 0-0 or 1-1. I remember, but it was just a great atmosphere, and obviously everybody it sort of built up the game for like a couple of weeks before. Like the couple of games before that, no one was really that bothered, because you're just thinking, whatever happens, we need to be right for the derby game. But yeah, it's intense. It's an intense derby, definitely. And Hillsborough's in fairness, a really good stadium. It's a big stadium, and I always enjoyed playing there. I've played there for like Sheffield United, Leeds, Derby. Yeah, it's been great.
Would you like to play against Carlton Palmer when you were a young lad? Obviously, he's a legendary character in the game.
Yeah.
Very outspoken.
Yeah.
What was it like to play against him?
Do you know what? It was funny, because quite a few people before the game were saying, "Oh, he might try and do this, or he'll try and wind you up, or you think, oh, all the players will be a little bit dirty or whatever." But he was really good, to be fair. He just got on with the game. He is a big character, I think. But no, he was good. He was good. There was no sort of problems there. He was just concentrating on his game, to be honest. But it's good, because I've had that a few times where I've played against, especially when I was younger, where I've played against players who have obviously had successful careers, and they're older. Carlton Palmer. I remember playing against Jason McAteer quite a lot. Paul Merson, played against him. Who else played against? Played against Gazza. Which was a bit of a. That was a bit. Actually, there's a little story to this. Actually, played against Gazza. It wasn't actually a competitive game. It was. Remember when he went to Boston with Steve Evans? We played him pre-season, I think. It was pre-season. It was away at their place, and we were obviously a much better team. And obviously, I was playing directly against him in midfield, and obviously, Gazza was like my sort of hero idol growing up. That was sort of my time of getting into football, was the 1990 World Cup. So I was about 7? Yeah, that's when I started playing football, when I was 7. So yeah, born in 83, 1990. That's my first memories of football on the TV. So to play against Gazza, I was like, this is like unbelievable. But obviously, he's been such a great player. But he was old by the time he was playing there. I mean, I don't know how old he must have been, but he must have been pushing 35. And obviously, like anyone, you can't get around the pitch as well as you want to. And he was probably quite frustrated with his team, because we were obviously dominating the game. And I can just remember, it was really innocuous. They had a throw-in, they had a throw in it, and I was just stood behind him, and then I wasn't even touching him, and then he just turned around and punched me. Not really hard. He just turned around and just jabbed me like that in the face, and I just stood there. I was like shocked, and then he just done it, and then just ran off and got the ball from the throw-in. And I don't know if he'd done it because he thought he won't know what to do it. But yeah, that was my first, which was I was like, it did put me off him a little bit for a period because I was like, why did he do that? But then, to be honest, it's just one of them things. He's a character, isn't he? It's one of those. He seems, with the more you see of him, you can see that he'd probably done that joking or messing about. But yeah, first time played against Gazza, he bopped me one right in the nose.
Brilliant. Did you not speak to him after the game and say, what was all that about?
No, I didn't, because it was pre-season. I think he didn't play the full game. Because I think he'd just gone there. He'd literally just signed there at that time. But I think they had a few players at Boston at that time. Do you remember David Noble, midfield player?
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, he was a good footballer. He was there. Obviously, Steve Evans was the manager, but no, I didn't speak to him after the game. I was only probably about 18. I would never have gone up to Paul Gasgoine and started sounding him out on why he's just punched me. But yeah.
Now you're establishing yourself well at Sheffield United. You're a big part of the team, involved in some massive FA Cup nights. I know you scored twice against Liverpool as well, which is fantastic as a player and great to be involved with as a team. I'd like to focus a little bit on the team's promotion to the Premier League. The year finished second to Reading on that record-breaking Reading side as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about that season a little bit?
Yeah, the year we went up. Well, it started off that year. It's quite strange for me, really, because I've been sort of a fixture in the team since I broke in, really, at sort of 18. And then that season, we went away to China pre-season, and it was a slog, I'll tell you. We went there, it's like, 12, 13 hours on a plane. Personally, I was never used to travelling that far. And it was just really difficult for all the lads because obviously the time difference, everyone was knackered when we got there. The food was like, let's say, not something we were used to. So we went over there, everyone was knackered. We were training, it was so hot. We trained and you were like, literally, you'd take your shirt off after and you'd just be wringing it out. It's like basically, I don't know, a wet towel, just sweat coming out of it. There was like these sort of dragonfly things, like thousands of these dragonflies that like, they sort of like just above head height and they'd just be flying around when you were training and you were like, what? They can't hurt you, but you were like, what is going on here? So we played a few games over there and it was really tough, but I think it sort of brought everyone together and it really bonded everyone for that season. We came back and we started the season, and to be honest, I didn't start the season very well, and I don't know, for whatever reason, I was getting a little bit, well, I just wasn't at it. And then the gaffer left me out of a couple of games, and it was the first time I'd sort of not been in the team, and it gave me a much needed sort of reality check on things, because I don't know whether I'd got a little bit too comfortable in the team, thinking, oh, I'll always play or anything like that, because I had played constantly before that. And I dropped out the team for a couple of games, and we just won, and we just kept winning. And we just went on a really good run. I was always involved on the bench or whatever, and obviously because we were winning, the team just stayed exactly the same. So I couldn't get back in, but I needed that time out because it made me realise I needed to get my head down, work hard. And then when I got my chance again, which was, I think it was like just before Christmas. I got a chance. I played away at Hull and we beat them. And then from there, I then stayed in the team till the end of the season. But we had some really good older professionals that the gaffer had signed, because he'd sort of the season before, he got frustrated because we just kept coming up short. And he was like, at the beginning of that season, he was like, right, we're going to have a real go at it this season. It was sort of a make or break season, to be quite honest with you, James, where if we hadn't have gone up, I think he might have left anyway. But the owners backed him. He brought in David Unsworth at left back, who was a really good signing. He brought Craig Shaw in, who was an experienced player, great guy, both of them great guys. Neil Shipley signed him as a striker, who was brilliant for us. Who else did we have? Paul Eiffel, we signed him. Keith Gillespie. We had a really good, strong squad of players, and he added to that in the January as well. But we just went on such a good run. I think we got knocked out of the cups pretty early, so we were just concentrating on the league. And come Christmas, obviously we were up at the top, and then turned Christmas, I think it was Reading obviously at the top, and then it was us, and then it was Leeds. Leeds were in third, and obviously at this point there was a little bit of because Kevin Blackwell had gone to Leeds at this point, and they were sort of on our coattails, and there'd been a bit of banter between, because obviously sometimes in teams, some lads know lads from other teams, and you see them around, especially in Yorkshire, and it got a bit tight. It was getting quite tight. They were doing well, and we sort of, I can't remember what it was. It came up to like Easter time, and I think one of the lads we had at the time, Rob Coslock. Do you know him? He's a right back, real character in the team. Really funny lad, and like we'd been winning quite a few games away from home, and I remember Cosy text Blackie, Kevin Blackwell, on the bus on the way back, and I can't remember what he said. I think he just sent him a message saying, do you need the direction for Wembley or something like that? Because obviously they were gonna go into the playoffs or whatever. And then I think the gaffer found out about that, and he was quite annoyed, because he was like, don't do that, because you're just making it, you're setting yourself up for something there. And like any time you are in the season, you have a little bit of a rough patch, and just before Easter we'd lost a few games, and we were getting a few injuries and what have you, and we'd signed a few players in January, and the gaffer, it was to boost us and make sure we were right, but I think he almost ended up with a scenario where we had too many players, and then you get to a point where you're like, I'm not sure then who to play. And Ships had been brilliant up top all season, and he dropped out the team a little bit, because I think we signed Adi Akinbaye in January, and we had Bruce Dyer, Jeff Horsfield, Stephen Cabba, Danny Webber, loads of strikers. And then anyway, he brought Ships back in, and sort of that made a real impact, Ships, and we played Cabs or Webbs off him, and then we went on another good run again. I think it was the Easter, we played away. We beat Cardiff on Easter Monday, and then it was going to be dicey because it was so close, and we still had to play Leeds at Bramall Lane. So we beat Cardiff. Unfortunately, I think it was Reading. I think Reading went to Leeds. Leeds needed to win the game and then give themselves a chance of, if they then beat us, it'd be really, really tight. They were on the same points as summer, and I think Reading got a draw at Leeds, and that sort of secured us going up. So we were sort of like absolutely buzzing then, because that was on a Easter Monday, and I think we had Leeds the next game. So it was mad, really. And then we had a couple of games then towards the end of the season, but I think we were in Marbella in April at that time. We went on our post-season party, piss up if you like. We was in Marbella come April. It was launching it down with rain, like, don't get me wrong, but we were over there. And then I remember we were sat in a bar, all the lads, funnily enough, Reading were over there at the same time. So we were all in that out there in Lineker's, and the Reading boys were there. And then all of a sudden it came on the TV. They changed the games round, and they were putting our game against Palace on TV. And we were like, oh, for God's sake. Because literally we were there till like maybe the Thursday. And then we were playing Palace on the Sunday. And I think a few of the older lads, I think he boycotted the game, should I say, not boycotted the game because I think he was still drunk. But yeah, it was a really good season. A really good season. We had a really good team there. Really good team. We deserved to go up.
When you're at Marbella and you've got different groups of players, different age groups, maybe some players are married, some players are single. Is it quite chaotic? You know, people doing different things and there's a lot going on.
Well, to be fair, at that time, it weren't too bad because it weren't that busy. So we really should have waited till the season had finished. But I think everybody just thought, and the manager thought, rather than cut time off everybody's break, just go now. And it'd just be a lot easier because I think usually a lot of people with families have holidays booked straight away and all this sort of thing. So, yeah, but it was a good time, though, to be over there. Reading were obviously buzzing because they got promoted. We were talking to them and we were obviously on a high of going up. And listen, it is great to go up through the playoffs, but I'll tell you at the time, if you can go up automatic, there's nothing better than that.
Would Neil Warnock give the players curfews, and how would he handle a player that had sort of broken a curfew?
Well, what he used to do actually is, if any of the lads who he thought would get into trouble, he just banned them from going.
Really?
So yeah, he'd say we had a team night out, he'd probably ban. He wouldn't let Paddy go because he knew Paddy always used to. To be fair to Paddy, I always used to feel for him a little bit because Gaffer used to stop him from going, but people always used to sort of pick fights with Paddy for some reason. I don't know why. So he always used to get banned from going over there. But he came to Spain, but if in England, Keith Gillespie, he always got banned. But although Keith is the nicest guy you'll meet, but he can drink. I'll give you that. Some I don't know where he puts it. He's like a rake, but he can put the drink away. But he's a great guy. Who else did we have? Who we didn't? I think it was the Irish boys really. Paddy, Keith Gillespie, Alan Quinn, the fiery temper ones. He never used to let them go. They had to stay at home. So that's usually how he used to deal with it. But he was all right. He never really. We never really had a situation where he had to. Not that I knew of, anyway. And if he did, I think he'd have just kept it. He would have handled it in the right way, I'm sure.
Is it a worry for players when you get promoted, whether that be automatic or through the playoffs, that the manager might have new ideas to bring in a new set of lads to try and bring in bigger name signings for the Premier League? Is that a concern for players who have got the club promoted?
I think it is, yeah. I think it is. I think you realise that, I mean, you've got to be realistic. You know that going up a league, and really at the end of any season, the club are always going to look to try and sign people. But I suppose you've just got to think to yourself, well, whoever comes in, I've just got to prove that I'm good enough to be playing. And I think if you've been playing that season, you always feel like you're going to have an opportunity to sort of prove yourself and see how you do at the Premier League level. And I mean, for myself personally, it's quite strange. I didn't start the season, like I said earlier, and I missed quite a chunk of it, which was obviously disappointing. But you know, I've always thought in any season, you're always better to play the set. If you're going to miss any part of the season, miss the start of it and and finish it, because you always end up you're in a better position then for the next season. And then I started the next season and started quite well actually. I think I got an injury actually after about 6 or 7 games, and I was devastated. I'd done my ankle. I ruptured my ankle ligament against Chelsea at home, and I just I cannot believe this. I've worked so hard to get up, And obviously, Premier League, you just want to play in it. And then I got an injury and I was out for maybe, must have been 8 or 9 weeks. And it was that was really, I've been very lucky, to be honest, throughout my career. I've never really had any major injuries. But I had that 9-week spell out, and that was probably the most difficult, more so just because I'd waited so long and been looking forward to playing in the Premier League. And then I was missing weeks of it. And you just feel like, oh, am I going to get this opportunity again? Do you know what I mean?
How do you as a team get motivated or prepare yourself to go and get points at Old Trafford or to go and get points against Chelsea away from home? Are you going to these games expecting to get something, or are you a little bit sort of damage limitation and trying not to get conceding too many goals?
I think I'm just trying to think when we went to those games. I think a lot of people mention it now or talk about it now. You view them as sort of bonus games, if you like. You know, you go there, you either think, right, we're going to try and keep it tight and nick one, or you go there and you go, right, we're just going to have a go at it. But I think, to be honest, years ago, a lot of people were a lot more negative going into games like that. People used to go a lot more defensive, and it's quite refreshing to see now. And it makes the game better that a lot of teams that go up and lower teams in the Premier League, they don't sort of take that attitude. They go and try and have a real go. I mean, like Leeds did against Liverpool the other day. Years ago, everybody used to just sit in and defend. And I think we did a little bit, because you're always got that fear of when you're playing a top team, you could easily go and get really, really spanked. You get done 6 or 7. If you go, you know, if you get spread, people just play around you, and players are so sharp and quick. And at the Premier League level, what I noticed, to be honest, more than anything, the major difference is just the top end of the pitch. Obviously, you've got better defenders and better midfield players, but the amount of times we were playing, or you were playing in a game in the Premier League, and you're thinking, you know, 20 minutes gone, we've started the game pretty well, we're on top, we're pushing, and then before you know it, bang, they've had one attack and they're 1-0 up, because the strikers are just so ruthless. And you find that a lot of players they just score goals out of nothing, really. And you just can never ever can you think at that level that you're doing all right and you're comfortable, because the game can just change so quickly. And that was the thing that I noticed so much. And that's why I think a lot of managers, especially a few years ago, were fearful of getting beat 5, 6, 7, because unfortunately you can understand it from a manager's point of view, because that type of result puts you under a lot of pressure. Even though it's against a Liverpool or a Chelsea, losing 7-0 to anyone, the fans start to think, oh, this isn't good enough, you know what I mean?
That season, Sheffield United were involved in a big dogfight for relegation.
Yeah.
How did Neil Warnock handle that? How was his pressure and stress levels like? Bearing in mind, it's a different kind of pressure from chasing the championship to trying to catch it, to then trying to fight for survival. How do you think he handled that season?
I think he handled it well. I think we were in a really strong position going into sort of the last, I'm not sure how many weeks of the season, but we played West Ham and beat West Ham 3-0 at home. And I think that took us like 10 points clear of them. And you're sort of thinking, right, well, we're in a good position here. But that's the thing, you see, at that level, you can easily go 4, 5, 6 games without getting a point. And we, in fairness, we went down, but West Ham's form in the last probably 5 games of the season was incredible. They probably won 4 out of 5 games, or 5 out of 6 games, something like that. Because I can remember thinking, I can't believe it, they've won again. I think they beat Chelsea at home, and then they were catching us a little bit. And there was other teams in it as well, and Fulham were down there, and they were in trouble. I mean, Fulham were really struggling. And I think the manager, Neil, was really annoyed with can't remember. I think it was Rafa Benitez who was the manager of Liverpool at the time, because Fulham were really struggling, and then Liverpool went there. They played a weakened team, and it was like, and Fulham got a result, and it saved them. And it was a bit like, I know you can't blame other people, but you're a bit, you're not being fair to everybody else. But that's maybe sour grapes on my part. But yeah, West Ham, obviously they had Tevez up front, and I just.
Did they have Mascherano as well?
Yeah. This
is the season with the third-party ownership stuff involving Tevez and Mascherano, isn't it?
Well, they did have Mascherano, but he went on loan to Liverpool that year because I played against him when he was at Liverpool. I can remember when we played him at Anfield. But yeah, like Tevez, for example, he was unbelievable in those final games. And although we got relegated, I just felt that it was fate in the end, because there's no way that anyone could have predicted that West Ham would have won those games. I mean, on the last day, they went to Old Trafford and won. And that was just unheard of at that time. And you're talking Ronaldo, Rooney, the whole lot. I mean, and United, to be fair, they'd won the title, but I know for a fact if they had needed to win that game, they would have won that game. Like if Man United had needed to get a result against West Ham and needed to beat them, and we were going into the last game knowing that if West Ham got beat, we were safe, we could have not bothered turning up, because United would have beaten them. But yeah, they got a result, and then I think we ended up going down by a goal, which is heartbreaking. We played Wigan last game, and West Ham played United. And for us to go down, we had to lose to Wigan, and West Ham had to beat United. And yeah.
So you guys went down on goal difference?
Yeah, went down by a goal, yeah.
That must be so frustrating. Literally one.
Yeah, because when something like that happens, all you do, still do it now, you go through your head all the times in that season where someone's made a mistake, or you think, oh, if we'd got, like what you were saying before, and that made me think about it then, where you go to a team away from home and you think, right, shall we keep it tight and not give away however many goals, because it could be important at the end. And there's so many instances during the season where you've conceded one, or you should have scored one, you've hit the post and it's not gone in, and ultimately it's cost you. So yeah, that was disappointing. So disappointing.
It must have been tough for you guys to regroup in the next season in the Championship. Warnock still in the Championship when you went back down?
No, he left. They decided to, I don't know whether the club got rid of him or he decided to leave himself. I think the club, again, a mistake from the club, I think, to let him go. But maybe he just felt, I've took the team to the Premier League. I've worked so hard for how many years to get the team there. It's not quite worked out how we all wanted it to, and it's time for somebody else to have a go at it. So yeah, it was difficult to adjust, because you sort of come down, and then, like it happens with a lot of teams, you've got certain lads who leave, and then you sign different people, and it takes time for everyone to gel. And then you're obviously one of the favourites for the league. People are coming to your place and raising the game. Brian Robson came in as manager, and in fairness, he came in at a really tough time, because it was hard to manage that at that point. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the results. The fans were turning, and then I think Brian left in sort of the January of that season, which was massively disappointing, because we had such a strong squad of players, we signed James Beattie from Everton, Gary Naismith. If you look to the squad, you'd be going, there's no way they shouldn't win this league. But it's not, like you say, you don't win games on paper, do you? And then Kevin Blackwell came in as manager then, actually, in that January. And I actually remember him saying to me, what's going on? How are you lot not further up the league? We had such good players, experienced players. Who else did we have? We had Gary Speed. We'd signed him. Brian Robson signed Gary Speed. we had, who else did we sign? Lee Hendry, we'd signed him. He was a good, very good player. So we had like Premier League players who'd been there and done it, had signed for us, but we just couldn't find the balance at the time. So it was a shame. Then Blackie came in, and to be fair, it was a shame actually, because if we'd have had more games, we'd have probably got in the playoffs. We just missed out on the playoffs by a couple of points, which was disappointing. And then the season after that, that's when I left actually, the season after that.
Is that when Stoke came in for you, or was it in the summer of that season that Stoke came in?
No, what it was. So obviously how the transfer window used to work, it was like, how can I say? It was like the second week in, was it September? You'd play a few games and the transfer window was still open, I know that. And Stoke just came in for me literally at the last hour of the transfer window. And yeah, I ended up going there. It was quite a surreal couple of days actually to go there, because you're talking like, I don't know, you say it was a Wednesday. I think it was a Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday. It was a Tuesday. I tell you, it was a Tuesday, because I'd come back to Manchester actually, because we had the next day off on the Wednesday, and then I got a call sort of 10:30 at night, and it was shutting at 12, saying, "Oh, Stoke City want to have put an offer in for you. You need to get to one of the stadiums." So I went to Sheffield to speak to, obviously, Kevin Blackwell and Sam Ellis. Got over there, it must have been 20 to 12, and we had a quick chat. And it was a shame, really, because it's probably, in fairness, the only way I would have ended up leaving, because if I'd have had more time to think about it, I know I would have talked myself out of going. And I sort of spoke to Kevin Blackwell, and he said, Stoke have come in for you. But he was honest, and he said sort of the chairman and the club have asked me not to talk you into staying. So basically saying that they want to sell me. They obviously wanted the money. So, that was sort of in my head. You sort of think, right, well, they don't want you to stay, so why are you going to stay somewhere where you're not really wanted? And it was a shame, because I've been at Sheffield for coming up 10 years really, and then I ended up leaving. And that's the thing with football. You like that morning, I'd been training there, didn't know anything. I'd spent the last 9 years there, and then in an instant, you never go back again. Obviously, I've been back to watch games and stuff, but you don't play for them again. So yeah, then the next day I was in at Stoke, and then that was that.